Okay. Good afternoon. I want to welcome you to the USDA presentation on exceptions for the USGSA designations. My name is Carla Whalen. I'm the director of the Quality Assurance and Compliance Division. We're going to make a fast switch on what we were going to do today due to technical difficulties. So I'm going to actually introduce our speaker. And then our speaker will take over and walk you through the final rule, which was issued in early May. And if you need copies of that, you can let us know, but it is available on the public FR websites. So I'm going to introduce Jose Ricardo Espatia. He is going to walk you through this. Ricardo joined the FGIS team after a long career with the Peace Corps, serving in quality management and operation positions domestically and overseas. His professional experience includes working in the nonprofit sector, international development project management, training, and quality control. Ricardo is from Austin, Texas, speaks Spanish and Tagalog, and has a bachelor's degree in international relations and a master's degree in development management. And I would just like to say Ricardo is a newer team member. As many of you in the industry know, we've had quite a addition to our team this year. And Ricardo has been an exceptional help for us on this exceptions rule. So he's going to present, and I'm going to turn it over to him. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carla. No pun intended. Hello, everyone. Good morning and good afternoon from wherever you are joining us today. My name is Ricardo Espatia, and I'm a compliance officer in the Quality Assurance and Compliance Division in FGIS, and I will be going over much of our presentation today. So let's get started. All right, so here is our agenda. There will be three main parts to our webinar. First, a series of updates to the updated exceptions program. Next, we will demonstrate new resources to the exceptions program, such as an updated web page and new related documentation. And finally, we will close with a question and answer portion. I ask that you please hold your questions until the Q&A portion towards the end of the webinar. Now, to preface, there will be a lot of information stated today, and all of this information will be made available in various resources, and you can always email FGISQACD@usda.gov with any questions you may have related to today's topic. And finally, we will not be monitoring the chat during the webinar today. So jumping right on in, what is an exception? So under the U.S. Grain Standards Act, official agencies are designated by USDA to provide official services in an assigned geographic area. And under certain conditions, a customer may request that a different official agency provide services to their facility. If the request is approved by FGIS, this is referred to as an exception. And to reiterate, it is the customer that must request an exception, and they may only do so under certain circumstances. So in the first part of our presentation, we will discuss three elements to the updated exceptions program, and each will be discussed in detail. So kicking it off with timely service exceptions. Timely service occurs in one of four scenarios. One, when the assigned official agency, and by assigned official agency, we mean the OA that oversees the geographic area where the customer is physically located. When the assigned OA cannot provide a customer official service within 6 hours of the services being requested. Or second, the assigned OA cannot provide the certificate by the next business day as stated in the regulations. Third, does not offer the official services being requested by the customer. Or four, due to a short-term disruption, such as a weather instance. Now, all requests for a timely service exception must be made on the new QACD 101 document titled Request for Exception to USGSA Geographic Boundaries, which will be shown later in the webinar. Now, there are 3 tiers to timely service exceptions, which must be requested and approved in order to move through the tiered system. Now, when requesting a timely service exception, the reason for the request is the same, meaning that an untimely service instance has to have met the criteria from the previous slide. The major difference between the 3 tiers is when the customer is eligible to apply. So the first time that a customer requests a timely service exception due to an untimely service occurrence by the assigned OA is considered a one-time request. Now, ideally, requests should be made prior to the customer receiving services from the gaining OA. And by gaining OA, we mean the official agency that is located outside of the geographic area where the customer is physically located. And per the new rule, for requests made during standard business hours, FGIS aims to make a decision that same day. However, as to not adversely impact the industry, one-time request can be retroactively made within 2 business days after service is performed. This may occur if, for example, the service is needed outside of normal business hours, in which case the gaining OA may provide services before FGIS has had a chance to make its determination. But regardless, a request for a one-time timely service exception must always be submitted by the customer. And additionally, in the event that FGIS cannot provide a one-time request decision the same day, again, the gaining OA may provide services, but the gaining OA must email FGIS within 2 business days after the service is performed and notify QACD of the services provided. So, if services are provided before FGIS makes a decision for one-time request, both the customer must still submit the request for a one-time exception, and the gaining OA must notify FGIS and QACD to inform us of the services performed. The next tier is a 90-day timely service exception. So if a customer has been granted a one-time exception and there is another instance of untimely service under the criteria from the previous slide by the assigned official agency within 180 calendar days since the first instance in which FGIS granted that one-time exception, then a 90-day timely service exception request may be submitted. So again, if a one-time request has been approved, the customer has a 180 calendar day eligibility window in which if there's another instance of untimely service within those 180 days, the customer is eligible to request a 90-day timely service exception. The third and last tier of the timely service exceptions is a long-term timely service exception request. So if a customer has been approved for a 90-day exception, those 90 days have expired, then the applicant has returned to their assigned official agency, and from that moment, there's a 365 calendar day eligibility window in which, should another instance of untimely service, again, under the criteria from the previous slide occur, then the customer may request a long-term timely service exception request. So again, 90 days has been approved, the 90 days has lapsed. From that point, there's a 365-day eligibility window for the customer to request a long-term timely service exception if there is another instance of untimely service. So the review and determination process for requesting a timely service exception. First, the applicant submits the request on the QACD 101 document and emails it to FGIS QACD at USDA.gov. And once the request is received, FGIS will review the request for completion and notify the applicant, the assigned OA, and potential gaining OA that the request has been received. From that moment, the assigned OA has 14 calendar days from the date of this notification by FGIS that the exception request has been received to challenge the timely service exception request if desired. This 14 calendar day challenge window applies to all three timely service exception tiers. And we will be discussing the challenge feature in more details later. But please note that the challenge period for assigned OAs is 14 calendar days from the date they are notified by FGIS. And finally, for timely service exceptions, FGIS will aim to make a determination within 15 business days of notifying all three parties that the request has been received, barring a challenge from the assigned OA. So if the request is challenged by the assigned OA, the 15 business day review period may need to be extended. And to note, while the customer is waiting on a decision for a 90-day or long-term timely service exception request, they may use the potential gaining OA. FGIS is going to consider what led to the untimely service, if the request aligns with the regulations, and the overall impact to the official system when making a determination on timely service exception request. And during our review, if an applicant submits a request for a timely service exception that FGIS determines to be false or misleading, not only will FGIS not grant the exception, we may also elect to limit the applicant from submitting future exception requests for a period of up to 180 days. Now to note, for one-time timely service exceptions, if an urgent request for timely service exception was granted on the basis of false or misleading information, the service may still deny that applicant from submitting future timely service exception requests for up to 180 days. And finally, once a determination is made, the customer, the assigned OA, and the gaining OA will be notified, and FGIS will send a memo with the final determination, any clauses that apply, and the termination date if the exception was granted. So speaking of terminations, one-time timely service exceptions expire after the service is performed. And for 90-day timely service exceptions, those that are granted are active for 90 calendar days from the date that they are approved. And for long-term timely service exceptions, they are active through the designation period of the gaining official agency. There are a few special circumstances that may apply. First, if the issue which caused the untimely service has been resolved, then FGIS may, after consulting with all parties, cancel the timely service exception. And the applicant may also request to cancel the timely service exception at any time for any reason by notifying FGIS, the assigned OA, and the gaining OA. And to reiterate, in all instances, a timely service exception will end no later than the end of the designation period of the gaining OA. So the second program update that we will be discussing is the re-adding of non-use of service exceptions. So under the new rule, applicants may once again submit non-use of service exception request if they have not received services from their assigned OA for at least 90 calendar days. And this 90-day period does not include any periods already covered under approved timely service exceptions. And just like timely service exceptions, non-use of service exception requests are also submitted on the QACD 101 document, which we will showcase later. And the request for a non-use of service exception must include at minimum the last date of service from the assigned official agency. We'll want to know the reason why services have not been requested or received during that time, the overall reason for the request, and there's additional information which is optional to include but helpful in making a determination, such as the location of specific service needs, the types of services requested by the applicant compared to those offered by the assigned OA, the ability for the assigned OA to provide the requested service. We'll look at whether the applicant's facility has ever used the official system, and the impact to the applicant in the event that they continue with the assigned OA. Now, all of that additional and optional information I just listed is outlined in the new rule. All right, the process for requesting a non-use of service exception is very similar to requesting a timely service exception. So it starts with the applicant submitting the request on the QACD 101 document and emailing it to FGIS QACD@usda.gov. And once the non-use of service request is received, FGIS will review the request for completion and notify the applicant, the assigned OA, and the potential gaining OA that the request has been received. And from that point, just like before, the assigned OA has 14 calendar days from this notification to challenge a non-use of service request, which again, we will be discussing the challenge feature later on in the webinar. Then FGIS is going to make a determination in a timely manner, and we do aim to do so as quickly as possible. And once that final determination is made, the customer, the assigned OA, and the gaining OA will be notified, and FGIS will send a memo with the determination and any clauses that apply. Now, one key difference between non-use of service request and timely service exception request is that under non-use of service, while a customer is waiting for a determination for their non-use of service request, they may not use the potential gaining official agency and must wait until FGIS makes a determination. So FGIS considers the following when reviewing non-use of service exception request. We'll take into consideration the reason services haven't occurred in the past 90 days. We'll verify that the request aligns with the regulation. We'll look at the impacts to the applicant, the assigned OA, and the potential gaining OA related to, but not limited to, for example, the impact to the assigned official agency given the loss of business if the request is approved, and finally, the overall impact to the official system. And just like timely service exception request, if an applicant submits a request that FGIS determines is false or misleading, the FGIS will not grant the non-use of service exception and may elect to limit the applicant from submitting further requests for a period of up to 180 days. So approved non-use of service exceptions will remain in effect through the gaining OA's designation period unless all parties agree to cancel. There are special circumstances that could apply, and we'll discuss 3. So first, let's say that the gaining OA's designation has ended and they have been redesignated. In most cases, the non-use of service exception is renewed unless all parties want to cancel. The second scenario, let's say that the gaining OA is no longer designated because, for example, their designation period has ended and they have not been renewed. In this case, the non-use of service exception is automatically canceled and the applicant must return to their assigned official agency, and a new request for a non-use of service must be submitted by the applicant if desired. And the third scenario, let's say that the ownership of a facility with an active non-use of service exception changes. In this scenario, the exception is automatically canceled, and the new owners of the facility must submit a new non-use of service request, again, if desired. All right, so assigned official agency challenges. So under the new rule, when a timely service or non-use of service exception is requested by a customer, the assigned OA has 14 calendar days from the date that FGIS notifies the assigned OA that the exception request has been received to challenge the request if desired. This is not a requirement, but a representative from the assigned OA may challenge the request by completing the new QACD 102 document and submitting that document along with any other supporting evidence to support their claim and emailing it to FGIS QACD at USDA.gov. And by supporting evidence, this could be, for example, evidence that services were provided, documentation that demonstrates that a request for service was not submitted, or in the case of 90-day and long-term timely service requests, evidence that the reason for untimely service has been resolved, or for non-use documentation that shows that the agency will experience financial hardship if the non-use of service exception is approved, or that services were indeed requested or provided within the 90-day time frame. And these are just a few to mention. So when it comes to challenging timely service exceptions. For one-time request, given the urgency of one-time timely service exception request, there may be cases where FGIS grants the exception before the 14-day challenge period is completed. However, assigned OAs wishing to challenge a one-time request should still do so as soon as possible, but no later than 14 days after being notified that the request has been submitted. And in cases where the one-time request has already been granted, the assigned OA may still challenge FGIS's determination. And as a reminder, while the customer is waiting for FGIS to make its determination on 90-day or long-term timely service exception request, the gaining official agency may provide services to the customer. And the new rule states that FGIS will make every effort to make a determination within 15 business days for timely service request, but may need to extend the request if the request is challenged by the assigned OA. Now, for non-use of service exceptions, the rule does not state a determination timeline, but FGIS aims to make a determination in a timely manner and as soon as possible. And as stated earlier, for non-use of service exception request, the applicant must wait until a determination is made before receiving services from the assigned OA and may not receive services from them while FGIS is reviewing the exception request. Thank you all so much for hanging in there. I recognize that that was a lot of information. Right now, let's shift our focus and demonstrate a few of the newly curated exceptions resources. So the first one that we are going to look at is the updated exceptions webpage. We will not go over all of the content on this webpage in exceptional detail, but we do want to highlight what information is available on this webpage. So this webpage is currently published and live on the AMS website, and it has a lot of information about exceptions to geographic boundaries, such as definitions to what exceptions are and when they apply, and then a lot of information regarding submission details. So we detail here who may submit requests and when, meaning under what circumstances. We include information about what should be provided in exception request submissions, how to submit a request, and what to expect after requests are submitted. So definitions of exceptions and submission details are found on this webpage. And additionally, there are numerous resources that are and will be made available on this webpage. First, on August 1st, an updated exceptions directive will be made available, which details the roles, responsibilities, and procedures related to the updated exceptions program. Additionally, the QACD 101 document, the request for exception to USGSA geographic boundaries, will be made available on August 1st, as well as the QACD 102 document, the exception challenge document that assigned OAs use to challenge a timely service or non-use of service request, will be made available on August 1st. Additionally, there is a PDF which includes a list of active exceptions, and this list will be updated as exceptions are granted and currently includes all active non-use of service exceptions which were reauthorized in 2019. Now, let's take a moment to look at the QACD 101 and 102 documents that we've spoken so much about today. So this is a preview of the USGSA, of the QACD 101 document titled Request for Exception to USGSA Geographic Boundaries. And this is the applicant or the document that the applicant will use to request a timely service or non-use of service exception. So section A of the document will include general information about the applicant. We'll want to know who is submitting the form, their FGIS number, which we will speak to in a moment, the assigned official agency for that customer, some contact information, and we do require the legal name and address of the facility in which services are being requested. So we do ask applicants not to include abbreviations or short names of facilities. And section B of the form, this is the meat of the exception request details. So this document covers one exception request, and a new document is required to be submitted for future exception request. So the applicant is going to select whether they are requesting a timely service, and if so, which tier, or a non-use of service exception. In both cases, we're going to want to know who is the requested official agency, some details about dates services were performed or are needed. And then for both timely service and non-use of service exceptions, the applicant must select a reason for their request from a drop-down menu. And there's a drop-down for both timely service and non-use of service request, as well as applicants are encouraged to provide additional information regarding their request in the spaces provided under each section. Lastly, the applicant should sign and date the form and email it to FGIS QACD at USDA.gov. And additionally, when emailing this document to QACD, the customer may attach additional documents or other files to support their submission. Now, the QACD 101 document also has an instructions page, which details what information is being requested on each part of the form. So if the customer has questions about what should be provided in any of the fields, all they must do is go to the back of the form under the instructions page to get more details about what we are requesting. And this includes the second piece of information requested on the form, which is the applicant's FGIS number. We require that every applicant submitting an exception request provide a FGIS number, and customers who do not yet have a FGIS number may request one through the link provided on the instructions page. This serves as an additional identity verification procedure. And the nice thing is that customers only need to request a FGIS number one time. And once they have their FGIS number, they may use that same number on future exceptions request. Now, this is the QACD 102 document. And this is the document that the assigned OA may use if they wish to challenge an exception request. So with this resource, we're going to want to know information about the submitter, so their name, title, and the OA that they represent, as well as some contact information and their FGIS number. In addition, we're going to want to know information about the specific exception request that is being challenged. And this information will be provided to the assigned OA prior to them needing to fill out this form. And then we do encourage them to use this box 11 here to provide as much information as possible as to why they are challenging the request and why, in their opinion, the request should not be granted. And then there's a space for the rep to sign and date the form. And just like the 101 document, there is an instructions page on the 102 document, which provides additional information and details regarding what information should be provided in each field of the form, along with some contact and submission details. And as a reminder, once FGIS notifies the assigned OA that the exception request has been received, the assigned OA has 14 calendar days from this date to challenge the request if desired. And both the QACD 101 and 102 documents will be made available on the exceptions webpage on August 1st. We will now transition to the question and answer portion of our webinar, and I will invite other QACD staff to join me in this portion of our discussion. So now I will stop sharing my screen and I will facilitate our discussion. So please, if there are any questions, please come off mute or raise your hand so that we may field your question. Alrighty, well, with that, we will close the exceptions webinar today. I want to thank all of you for taking time out of your busy days and schedule to join us today. And as always, should anyone have any questions related to exceptions, please visit our exceptions webpage or email FGIS-QACD@USDA.gov. Thank you all for joining and have a great rest of your day.